I have started the recording, and I can now declare that the October 20th meeting of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee is now in session. We have 5 members in attendance, all participating remotely via Zoom. So thank you all for being here. We may still have one. I know one member, Carrie, is not going to be here. Anita may still be joining us. We'll see how the time works. So the first item on the agenda is always opportunity for public comment for items not on the agenda. So if anyone wants to bring something up that's not on the agenda, this is a good time to do so. And John Bowman's raised his hand. Go ahead, John.
I just wanted to mention that I got the trifold brochure from the Pedestrian Advisory Committee today in the mail, and I think it's terrific.
Oh, well, great. I mailed physical copies to the people that I thought I had decent addresses for, which should have been all the members and a couple of other participants. So I didn't have email addresses for everyone who's ever attended our meetings, but I had physical mail addresses for a bunch. So good. Thank you, John. Glad you like it. I felt that everybody should have a physical copy of the thing that we produce and have been handing out, so you can actually see it. Because let's face it, your names are behind it. So it's good to know that you have a copy and have a chance to say what you think about it. Because we'll think about what else, do we want to do something else along the lines that's further down in the agenda. Any other public comment?
I just wanted to thank you also, following up on John. It was a nice surprise to get it in the mail. Thank you. Thanks for taking
very good. Well, I'm actually glad it got there. I didn't mail them that long ago, and I hope that the local mail service would get things there. So if any member didn't get one, for heaven's sakes, let me know, and tell me your address. So it sounds like Jonathan, Jesse got them. Janice, did you get yours? Okay, and Tommy?
I have not checked the mail today. I got home late, made dinner, and came right upstairs. So I'll have to check it.
Well, if after you check, you don't have one, let me know and I'll just double check the, well, hold on. I've got you at 393 Clinton Road.
Yep, it's probably sitting in the mailbox right now.
Okay, good enough. All right. Without further ado, let's move on to the next item, which is our updates from liaisons, and the one liaison we have. Well, actually, we have 2 liaisons here. So first, Lynn Echek from the Commission on Disability.
So I don't have any new updates. Sorry. We're just still our subcommittee again looking at the handicap parking spots, but nothing else new to add today.
So what's the current state of that? Where does it sit? I'm not clear on that.
It's just our availability to go and look at all the sites, but because we're a subcommittee, we have to schedule it, and then they have to post it. So we can't just go out and do it. And so we have to have, I don't know what is it, 48 hours. You have to let them know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, a while back, I checked with, this issue came up with respect to this committee's data collection. And I asked Tiffany Oliva, who unfortunately now is leaving. She just said there was an email today announcing that this week is her last week. But she felt that just collecting data did not require that whole subcommittee thing. If we weren't, talking about, if we weren't deliberating, we weren't talking about issues that we might have to decide on, but just making observations. So it sounds like you all got different advice. I'm guessing maybe that came from Sarah Kaplan, or where, do you know?
I believe so. And one of the other issues, because of I only work part-time, but the other 2 members are full-time. So we wanted to meet last Saturday, but there is, we're not supposed to meet on weekends. So Jim Lee is reaching out to the select board to see if that can be changed because of work. It's just difficult for people to meet Monday through Friday.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a confusion here between what the kind of deliberation in a subcommittee that the town is trying to, and town council are trying to sort of clamp down on. They don't want subcommittees having discussions that really should be taking place in a full committee meeting. But you're just gathering data. You're making observations and recording what you see. You're not deliberating. And so it seems to me that that should not require the subcommittee and the public posting and all those requirements that apply to full body. At least that's my opinion. I don't know if
I know.
Yeah, so I would hope that once he explains what's going on, that they would say, well, yeah, no, that's fine.
Right, we have to meet at we meet at 11 Pierce Street, the Public Health Building. We have to, before we can start collecting data, we have to meet and see if any public.
Right. And I'm saying, I think my opinion, which may be not worth anything, is that shouldn't be necessary. There's, yeah, so we'll see.
So it does
just, yeah.
interferes with our ability to meet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but our committee in the past has certainly had, 1 or 2 people, a couple of people go out at the same time collecting data, making observations. And so we have done that multiple times. Anyway, so we'll see. But anyway, so what of all the, I think you have some kind of a count about how many HP spots there are in town.
I don't know the exact number, but I think we've looked at about 100 spots. And again, we probably won't be able to assess every single spot. A lot of them are on little side streets throughout the town that a resident may have requested that they need a handicap parking spot in front of their home. So we're trying to look at again, we did all of Washington Street, all of Beacon, all of Harvard. We've done some side streets off of Beacon. And our next plan was to look at all the schools because there are handicap parking spots at the schools. Some of them are accessible, but there are some that aren't, and they're also used as voting places. So
yeah, no, that's really important for both of those purposes. So that's good. I mean, do you have a sense of, you say you looked at maybe about 100 spots so far. Are you thinking there's another 100 or another 50 or any idea?
More. Oh, there was hundreds. I think there's hundreds, and I don't know the exact number. I don't
that you actually intend to look at.
Well, we want to, we have Route 9. We haven't even tackled that yet. We've done Brookline Village. There's just we want to do more of the commercial areas.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
We happened to come upon a spot that's what's happened. We came upon some spots that we didn't realize they're right in front of this home. But again, a large majority of them are inaccessible. There's one, especially in Coolidge Corner. I think it's, what is it? Pizzeria Uno? I'm trying to think which. There's a handicap spot in Coolidge Corner that has a tree. I'm trying to think what else is in there. I pass it every day. I should know, but it's completely inaccessible.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing that people haven't thought of those when they put them up. Anyway, that's great.
And we've entered that data. Then we have to follow up and see how they're going to prioritize either moving the spot or taking care of the, if there's a block, how they can they replant a tree somewhere, move the spot.
My bet is it'll be mostly moving the spot to a different location that's not, not blocked on the pedestrian side. Okay. It's an important undertaking. I'm really glad that you all are doing it.
Thank you.
So keep at it. These things help make Brookline a better place to be. So Keith Lacey is not with us today. I did actually run into him on the street the other day and mentioned the meeting tonight. I had also, he had suggested, as I think I mentioned in email, having some of the brochures at the public safety building, and so I was able to do that. And so he helped me with that. Jonathan, anything from, I think there's also already been one of the workshop or other meetings on the bridle path?
Yeah, so a couple weeks ago was the project kickoff for the design review committee, and I'm gonna briefly recap that before I move to the walk and talks, which I sent an email about. Um, but it was a very high level kickoff. The initial meeting, we talked about things like the scope of the project. So I actually found this very illuminating, like what exactly was in scope for our conversations, what was out of scope. So we, the design review committee, we will be getting the plans to a 25% state, but which means there's a certain number of or a certain level of detail that's like pretty technically defined that we will help the project engineers get the plans to be. And the things that are in scope that we are allowed to look at and allowed to change are, how the configuration of parking, how many parking spots there are, what is happening with the trees, how wide the path is, even like lanes on Beacon Street, because there are some parts where, especially if you're going westbound, there's an area where Beacon Street goes down to one lane. And so all of these things are in scope of the project. And something that I had brought up before in these pedestrian advisory committee meetings is that a couple times the bridle path crosses the T tracks. And unfortunately, um, that is just a non-starter. The way that they had ideated and proven out that they could do the bridle path, it has to cross the T tracks because the T tracks are definitely not in scope for what we're doing, and the bridle path has to be on the wide side of Beacon because otherwise the project would kind of spiral out of control. So some of those pinch points that we had mentioned before, basically in Coolidge Corner and Washington Square, where the paths crisscross, the T tracks and the path crisscross, we're going to have to live with and basically help design a way around. So that was most of the, uh, I'll say the meat of the meeting. That was like the presentation that they created for us was basically what's in scope, what's out of scope, project timeline. We're going to be having all these neighborhood walk and talks over the next month or so. One was last week, and then another one is this week, and another one's next week. I'm only able to make it to the one that's next week on October 29th in Washington Square, but there's a few more. And uh, I can send out some information on the two that are remaining. And the purpose of those is essentially to present the information that we were presented last week for what the bridle path is at a high level supposed to be, and actually look at the site a little bit so that everyone can get a feel for what where the path will go and what it's supposed to accomplish, and actually see what it could look like on the ground, and then basically have like a community forum for questions and answers, and maybe get some ideas from the community for how they want to structure the path. And so those walk and talks, I emailed about the one at St. Mary's Street last week. And then there's again one this week and one next week. So if you can make it to one of those, if you have strong opinions on what you want the bridle path to look like, please do. And a couple of other important notes that came up at that meeting. So a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, I went to a transportation board meeting, and I think I reported back to this group that we were worried about the T upgrades interfering with the bridle path project, and that will no longer be the case. However, the T project is being accelerated because there is federal funding attached to it, and the MBTA is trying to spend those funds as quickly as possible before they potentially disappear. And so we are trying to pursue these projects in parallel and recognizing that it would be better if we could do them all at once, but that the T's got to do what they got to do so that we can get our accessibility upgrades, and we'll just do our best to make sure that the projects are in communication and working together. And the project liaisons and engineers have done a good job of that so far. And then the final thing that came up, it was a jam-packed meeting. It was 90 minutes and we talked about a lot. The final thing that came up, and this was the biggest point of probably committee discussion, was on the actual nature of the path itself in terms of how it was shared use. So there were some cyclists there that were concerned about sharing it with pedestrians, and I spoke up on behalf of the pedestrians, but I also understand the cyclist concerns because the path is only 6 or 8 feet wide. It's not like an especially wide bike path, and it would be pretty jam-packed at times like rush hour with people going all sorts of different speeds. And part of the proposal is to eliminate existing bike lanes in favor of the bridle path. So essentially, we would be making the bicycle way open to pedestrians and potentially causing dangerous interactions between cyclists and pedestrians. And so there was some discussion about ways that we could keep bike lanes on Beacon Street as well as open the bridle path that's more of a throughway for pedestrians and maybe slower cyclists, and the faster cyclists can remain on the bike paths on the street or the bike lanes on the street.
Yeah, I mean, figuring out exactly how that's gonna work, that I agree, that's a big thing. Oops, there's a minute, yeah. Um, Tommy, you had your hand up, but then it went down. Did you
Yeah.
want to say something?
I was gonna ask, was there any discussion about um, uh, posted bicycle speed limits on the path? Not that I think those are necessarily very effective, just curious if it came up.
There wasn't. I think that level of detail is something that we'd probably tackle more in like January winter sessions,
Yeah.
because this was pretty introductory. But it did come up kind of similar to the Riverway, where I believe that there are posted bicycle speed limits on the Riverway, or at least it says like bicyclists yield to pedestrians
Yeah.
there.
I think
And
that's
that
what it
was
says,
actually
yeah.
one of the parallels that they drew, so that we're trying to think about how we can model off of that.
Yeah, because I know some places have done it, but it doesn't actually really work at all. I know it's been a big issue. I kind of randomly, I know in Calgary it's been an issue, and they've had to completely re-examine like their multi-use paths all over. So just something to keep an eye on and make sure to bring up because
Yeah.
not a good solution usually.
Okay. John Bowman, put your hand up.
Yes, Jonathan, I was a little bit confused by one thing. And
Yeah.
it's where you talked about the bridle path crossing the tracks in Coolidge Corner and Washington Square. Did I understand you correctly to say that rerouting so that they don't have to cross the tracks has been ruled out? And they're stuck trying to make it work with the path crossing the tracks. And
Exactly.
that's what they're trying to do now.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this unfortunate thing that as you go along Beacon Street, sometimes the median parking is on one side of the tracks and sometimes the median parking is on the other side of the tracks. And we're trying to, in a sense, reclaim some of the space from that parking to recreate the bridle path. So it's hard. Marissa,
I apologize for not having followed this earlier or paid attention or noticed this, but so this is a dumb question, and I'm sorry, but why is the path a multi-use path for pedestrians and cyclists? And are we really okay with that? Because I think as a committee, we've generally been pretty clear that we believe we want bikes, we want pedestrians, but we want them in different places.
Yeah, and that's awfully narrow for a MUP too, like 8 feet. That's super skinny.
Yes, great questions. This is the first meeting we've had on it. So anything that, or like to get to this point, these were more there was a like a feasibility study, and I think that it was probably just part of the original ideation of the bridle path that it was multi-use, and so they kind of carried that concept forward. It is certainly within the realm of possibility that it would not be multi-use in the future. Um, like that's just something that we can bring forward to discussion to the Bridle Path Committee.
Now, I personally, I've had sort of my own opinion on this that I haven't really spoken out on it, is that if we have a wonderful path and the bridle path to get the bicycles off of the sidewalks and away from the pedestrians, then that frees up those nice sidewalks along Beacon Street on either side for the
Mhm.
pedestrians. And if we do things to improve the ambience of those walks as well, then we've helped both modes of transportation.
Yeah, and see
Jesse,
if you couldn't bargain for some pedestrian upgrades on those sidewalks as well, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
yeah, Jesse,
Yeah, I was just struck by your comment, Jonathan. That's news to me about possibly having bike lanes stay on Beacon Street and also on the path. That from the original design, I don't know, when I saw it 4 or 5 years ago, it was really to try to get, I think, the bicycles to a protected area, which is the bridle path, and then to skinny out Beacon Street a little bit with the parking to, reduce spaces in order to accommodate the wider path. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be concerned about, pedestrians, moms and kids and strollers using that path as a way of avoiding the sidewalk and having a pleasant walk through the tree area, and yet having bikes, commuting back and forth. So it seems like, um, unless they're very carefully, separated one from the other, that's like Tommy said, that's a pretty, looks
Yeah.
like a recipe for a lot of congestion. While we're still trying, while we of course want the sidewalks bike free, and still need parking and 2 lanes of traffic. So, yeah, my understanding back as 5 years maybe was that it was going to be all biking, 2-way biking in the bridle path,
Yeah.
separated from the pedestrians. So,
Well, so the all of the plans have been just bridle path and getting rid of the bike lanes. This was just an item of discussion during the committee meeting.
oh, okay,
Yeah, it's nothing's no pens have been put to paper about what I just said, but the path has always been multi-use.
yeah, exactly, yeah, that's
Okay.
true. Yeah, thanks. Okay, thank
Wonder
you.
if wonder if time-based constraints would be feasible at all. I don't know if people might pay more attention or if, because presumably you're going to see more bicycle congestion during rush hours and probably
Sure.
more pedestrian congestion during, weekends and like, middle of the day. I wonder if, having some type of, yeah, I don't know. Just thinking out loud.
Well, the other thing, Tommy, on that is what about runners? When
Right.
runners
Yeah.
when runners learn about the bridle path, that's where they're going to be running, and they're going to
Yeah.
be
Yes,
avoiding
they run in
strollers.
bike lanes right now.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, I'll take the my personal opinions and the opinions of this committee might be at odds, but I will represent this committee's interests because I would love to run on a bridle path.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hmm.
Okay.
okay, John Bowman.
Yeah, I was just wanting to mention that although I would like the path to be bicycle only, I think the people getting out of their cars on the diagonal parking are going to need to use the bridle path in order to get to crosswalks. So that's a problem.
Yeah, that there were some constraints there actually that did briefly come up, both people coming out of the cars and getting to the train as a potential reason why it was multi-use. There wasn't a whole lot of reason beyond that because most of the times those people would be crossing the bridle path for a very short time or using the bridle path to walk to the closest intersection. But that is a really good point and a reason why it might have to stay multi-use or at least reasonably multi-use.
Hmm. Janice.
So I'm imagining all of this traffic, and if I were a bicyclist similar to a runner, I definitely would want to use the bridle path. But I'm thinking about pedestrians crossing at the intersections. So in my experience, I don't often see bicyclists stop at traffic lights as they are supposed to do. What would be the controls in terms of managing bicycle traffic at intersections where pedestrians would be crossing the bridle path?
Didn't get to that level of detail. I don't have data on this, but I would venture to bet that for a protected bike lane in the middle of the street, you'd see fewer bicyclists running reds. A lot of the bicyclists in the room said that they often run reds so that they can beat cars. I know as a cyclist, I often do that if it's a particularly busy street because it's safer to break the law, which is absurd.
Uh,
Um,
the Idaho stop, right? Yeah.
yeah. So, on a protected bike lane in the median, we would still obviously see bad behavior, but it would be more like time savings and less and easier to enforce because it wouldn't be like for safety. It's definitely something that I'll bring up in another meeting once it comes up.
Well, I also don't wonder if it's hard to sometimes shake out exactly how people will use things and exactly who will use things before it's built, right? So, when I think of people that are really riding super fast, I don't imagine that are, relatively large contingent of like very serious cyclists that like to go on group rides and wear Lycra, myself included sometimes. Uh, I wouldn't be doing that on the bridle path, and I would be surprised to see most serious cyclists do it. And I would imagine commuters, like I said, I'm just speculating, but I would imagine commuters would probably be more constrained through there than maybe someone who's like, I'm trying to set my, King of the Mountain time coming down Beacon Street right now. So some of that stuff I worry, we won't really have answers until stuff's actually built. It's the same way you can build every path you want, and then people will still cut across open grass and make a cow path. So, I think you kind of have to aim for the best we can get, but there's certainly going to be some massaging wrinkles out after whatever gets built. No doubt about it. Sorry, I
Okay.
keep speaking out of turn. I'm sorry, I'll stop doing that.
Okay, Lynn.
Um, Jonathan, I was just wondering, is the design similar to along Memorial Drive where it's a shared bike path, pedestrian path, wheelchair path? Um, and it's, the sign, like you had mentioned, yield to pedestrians for bicyclists. And has there ever have there been any information or data about any problems on along Memorial Drive? I walk along that area, so you have to be careful because if I'm listening to music, I don't know that a bike is coming saying to me, to move over that are there behind me, and they're coming both ways. So it's
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything about if it's similar, but
We actually did draw the parallel to the Esplanade, similar to Memorial Drive. There are sections of it. So there are sections of the Esplanade and sections of Memorial Drive that are pedestrian on one part and bicyclists on the other. Same thing with the Riverway where they split. But there are other sections where it's all single lane. And I think the difference here is that the margins are so narrow. So there's no room even for a cow path on the side of the bridle path for pedestrian to step over because that's parking for Beacon Street. And so the parallel is there, but there's a lot more wiggle room in all of the existing areas that have that, where we don't think that it's totally we can't totally extrapolate the experience from other parts of Boston to here. Maybe with the sole exception of a part of Sturo Drive that has Sturo and then the river and then a very narrow 6 foot path. It's only about a quarter, half a mile long, and that is not fun to do any activity on that particular section. So that's probably the area that we have the most in common with, just because it's so narrow and there's no wiggle room on either side.
Jesse,
Yeah, I'm just going to add that on the Beacon Street Bridle Path Reconstruction website, there is a view, one of the two concepts, that has the two bike lanes 10 feet wide, 5 foot for each way, and a separate 8 foot sidewalk for pedestrians. So that would, because of the line, because of the striping and the construction details, it looks from the website at least that there's a potential for a separate 8 foot sidewalk, and then the 9 feet until the parking, which would give people a lot of safety area in terms of they're getting out of their car and getting on the walking portion of the bridle path and not getting near the bike path. Either the bike path there is either 12 feet wide, 6 foot each way, or 10 feet wide, 5 foot on each way, in which case you'd have an 8 foot sidewalk. So Lynn, that would give people like the ability to wheel themselves safely, push strollers and stuff like that, not even in the bike lane. It would be separated, in a couple different ways. There is
I'll have to
enough
take a
space.
look at that diagram because the one that I've been looking at most recently, and to be fair, I would say that 80% of the bridle path there will be room for cow paths and stepping off to the side and having a lot of that wiggle room. But there
Yeah.
are a couple of really critical
Yeah.
junctures, especially around like Coolidge Corner, like Harvard and Beacon Street and Washington Square as well, where there is no space at all. There's not an extra couple feet of room.
Right, but that's also the kind of places where, again, I mean, speaking maybe about bikers, they'll have to stop because it's a busy
Yeah,
intersection. They're coming out of a narrow, they're not on the street already. So there'll be maybe like there are in some of the other bike paths in, Concord, Lexington, there'll be traffic lights there maybe that say stop, bike stop,
yeah.
things like that. Pedestrian stop, stroller stop. And then when it goes green, they cross. That'd be a lot safer. Because you're not, I see the same thing, of course, bikers blowing through red lights all the time. But coming out of the narrow path in the middle of the bike, in the middle of the street kind of thing for the bridle path, Jonathan, to me, seems like something that we can do a better job of stopping, short of putting a bar down, like at train tracks, which could be done
Mhm.
also. Certainly, I think people will be more careful when it's in the middle of when it's on the bridle path.
Yeah, I agree.
Tommy?
Yeah, I guess, another thing I wanted to bring up was the path areas kind of just south of Brookline Village on Boylston that goes through near there's the fire station down there, right? And like the hotel. That
Gateway.
area may be worth looking at to see how pedestrian and bicycle interactions are going, because there is that stretch of separated bike lane that's like signalized separately as well. And I ride through there a lot to get to the like Emerald Necklace, to ride through. And there's a fair number of pedestrian cyclist kind of conflict areas there. And I've never seen it go really bad. And it has some pretty tight spots. So that could be informative
Mm.
for the design team to take a look at and see how people are using that area as well.
It's a really good point. I would think there are fewer commuters there,
Yeah,
but
probably.
I think it's probably a good test case, like especially at those peak hours, and because the lights are so long that there's probably a big backlog of people, like big pinch points of people all going through
Yeah.
at the same time that it
And there's
might
bus stops and things too, where you'll see
yeah.
a lot of folks kind of stack up and, be looking at their phones, not paying a lot of attention. And, I don't think I've ever heard of any like real serious, negative interactions around there. So it might be worth just keeping an eye on.
Yeah.
So I
And
guess,
I mean, I do think
go ahead.
overall the committee or the design review committee felt pretty strongly that the Bridle Path project should make the lives of all uh, non-car transportation easier. And so the goal was because we're building this for bikes and it had been ideated also for pedestrians. And whether that means making the path wider at some points and maybe turning angled parking into parallel spaces or whatever mechanism they had for actually making this path work for everyone a little bit better. That was kind of the thesis of our discussion, and I think all the details are still very much up in the air.
So I guess in my mind, this raises the question of whether at some point it will make sense for our committee to state a position in the sense regarding where do pedestrians belong in this new world. I mean, I have heard one comment when I think I don't remember, maybe I said something about the bridle path being primarily for bicyclists, and then somebody said, wait a minute, you're going to spend all this money and create something that's only going to be for bicyclists, and you're not going to allow the pedestrians to use it? Come on, it's going to be a great new space. Why prohibit pedestrians? Well, I mean, I don't have a good answer for that, except that if it moves the bicycles away from the pedestrians on the sides of the street, that also helps. And speed can be a factor too. There's a big difference between a slow walking pedestrian and a marathon running pedestrian. There just is. Believe me, in senior, when we talk about things that seniors are afraid of when they're out on the sidewalks, it's not just motorized scooters. It's also runners. They said they fear because they don't hear a runner coming up and suddenly they're startled and they're worried they'll accidentally move into the path of a runner and then be clobbered and knocked down. And believe me, my age, you don't want to be knocked down. You really don't. So it's tricky. So I guess I'm going to pose this to Jonathan. As you go through these meetings, think about when is the right time, if ever, for our committee to sort of weigh in and have a voice. It's got to be before things are too set in stone, but it's probably best after there's been more community feedback and at least some initial thinking about where it's heading. Let me throw it over to Jonathan. Does that make sense to sort of just be alert to when it makes sense, if it does,
Yeah.
for our committee to weigh in?
Yeah, and it does, and I fear that after this discussion, I fear I misrepresented the committee because when someone brought up making the bridle path bike only, I spoke out against it. I'm If we need to have a position like that, I'm happy to bring it up after the next meeting if that is something that does come up for discussion. But otherwise, it seems to me like our big concern is on speed and sharing speed. And one of the points that I made in the meeting was that the bridle path is a throughway, and my hope, at least, would be that people that are walking slower because they're going into a store or a cafe would not be using the bridle path because it is a three-way. They would be walking on the sidewalk. And the bridle path would be more for people out for a walk and with no intention of stopping except for at lights or people or pedestrians that were running. Um, and so I think we could potentially ask if we needed to, if this like continues to be a concern and we can't find a way to make it wider or differentiate pedestrians from bikes, we could ask a way if we could put in like some sort of speed limit, or we could or a minimum speed almost for the bridle path versus the sidewalk, or we could just lobby to make it bike only. I'm happy to bring those questions back to this group after the next meeting.
Well, I actually doubt that at least at this point that this committee is unanimous in how it feels about these questions. And quite frankly, it's a fairly complicated mix out there where we say, well, sure, if you're running fast, go here, but if you're walking slower, go here, and here, somewhere in the middle, we don't know where you belong. So I don't know, Marissa.
Yeah, I would suggest that the committee thinks carefully about like, is there a minimum width that we would feel comfortable saying that yes, we recommend pedestrians share this with bikes. You know, 6 feet is maybe kind of borderline, but like if it's only like a 4 foot wide path or something, like is there a minimum width, and do we want to really lobby hard like to push to go to from 6 feet to 10 feet so that you can paint a little strip that's only for pedestrians or something like that.
Yeah.
I can tell you off the top of my head for NACTO, they recommend 10 to 12 feet for a two-way multi-use path.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of like best practices, I would say.
So yeah, so those
Yeah.
are kind of, you know, those are probably already designed, or those standards are probably already set. I mean, the path I see in the October 9th meeting materials shows a 12-foot wide shared use
Yeah.
path,
That's like
uh,
minimum for sure.
which is, you know, a little tight, but you could certainly paint 6 feet of that as like the slow lane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or something like that, or put arrows, or
Yeah.
12 feet, you've got a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah, because if you had 12 feet, you could probably almost segregate it into four lanes, right? Like, or like three lanes, like slow bike, fast bike, and then pedestrian, right? Bang, bang, bang. That might work better than trying to have traffic going one way or the other, and I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, Jonathan, you might want to look up what the um what the standard like minimum width is or something. And
Yeah,
I am not a member of the committee, of any committee, so I can participate in any conversations by email if you want some help looking that up. And then, you know, I would again just really push for getting rid of some of that really wide parking. 17
I
feet of the space being used up for parking, that's a lot. That's more than any other single width that I see on this figure. So yeah, that'd be a great place to get some more feet.
I agree with all of this. I think that the trickiest points are going to be specifically, if I remember the intersections off the top of my head, Harvard and Washington, because both of those have a T station in the way, and I do think it narrows down to like maybe 8 feet for both directions at those points where it crosses the T track, and there's a T station right there. And so we, if we're talking about the throughway, we probably do have a lot more wiggle room, but there will, no matter what, be pinch points. And we might have to make some compromises there because it's not even parking that we can get rid of. It's like a T station that we cannot. But
There's some left turn lanes you could get rid of too.
that's very true.
I'm all about taking the space away from the cars and giving it to the shared use.
Actually, at
So
Harvard,
left
there's
turn
not
lanes,
any
parking, all
lane.
of that.
There's not any, I guess there's a right turn lane we could get rid of, but there's very few extra lanes unless we go down to one lane on Beacon.
Even better. Bro diet.
Some things that may be nice, but won't happen. Um, I'm thinking that it probably makes sense to come back to this. Now I'm trying to think if there's a way. Um, Jonathan, I'm going to ask you to think about this. Clearly, I'm guessing that at your kickoff meeting, there was a lot of bringing people up to speed. Am I correct?
That's exactly right.
Is there any way we could get a sort of a mini come up to speed for this committee at one of our next two meetings?
Well, you could attend one of the walk and talks because I believe that the conditions reports and the general gist of the project, it is an introduction to the project, but they do go in a little more depth than I just did on a lot of those things. Like where or what the width is and the what they're taking into account, and they're not showing, they show like the whole map and maybe zoom in on a few areas that I think a lot of you have had just looked at. But I could also ask for the slide deck that they presented if we wanted to look it through in our next pedestrian advisory committee meeting.
Yeah, that's what I'm sort of thinking. If we could,
Okay.
you know, basically get the slide deck that they use, ask everyone to go through it before the meeting. What I'm looking for, I mean, whereas attending the walk and talk, we're not going to probably do that as a group. What I want to do is to kick off more of a discussion within this committee. Because I think this one question of what's the best way to think about conflicts between and separation of different modes is important. Okay, Jesse has just put the document. I guess that is the presentation, huh? Okay, good. And so that's in the chat.
Yeah,
Okay,
Oh.
TRC meeting presentation 1. Thank you, Jesse.
sure.
So if we can all take a look at that, our meeting actually comes up pretty quickly. It's November 10th. So that's only a few weeks from now. And frankly, this has been a really good discussion. I think this is a difficult topic. And so I'm hoping that if we talk about it among ourselves, even if we don't take an action or come to an agreement, the points we raise will hopefully help Jonathan in his service on the design review committee and bringing up different, even if he has to present 2 different alternative perspectives from us. So it'll all be helpful.
Yeah,
So
this is very
I like that.
this is very illuminating for me, and definitely differently than how I was thinking about it. So I really appreciate all the input so far.
And you know, width, speed, separation, all those things matter. I mean, my experience with multi-use paths is along the lakefront in Chicago, where we lived for decades. And that's the way they market is there's in a sense, I may be remembering this in the reverse way, but basically I think it was the center section was 2-way bike, and then further out to the edges were for pedestrians, and maybe it was the reverse of that. But the point is, there were separate up within the total width of the path. There was a sort of sense of bike, also rollerblade section, and then a pedestrian stroller, other kind of section, and that you tended to pay attention to when a bike was, you know, bearing down on you really fast if you happened to wander over into the wrong part of the path. You know, you kept your eyes open, and it generally worked pretty well. So shared can work if it's properly delineated and people are behaving reasonably. But okay, I think this is a good discussion, and I like the idea of continuing it on to our next meeting. Okay. Next item on the agenda is just review and approval of the minutes from the September 8th meeting. Any comments, questions, additions, corrections to the minutes as distributed? If not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as distributed?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Okay.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Tommy,
Aye.
Jonathan,
Yep.
Janice,
Yes.
Jesse,
Aye.
and Anita.
Yes.
Okay, and chair votes yes. So we are unanimous among the ones 6 and 1 member absent. So that takes care of that item of business. Thank you very much. The next thing I wanted to talk about is just general reactions to the brochure. We already had a couple of complimentary comments. I think I can't remember. I think Jonathan, you weren't at the last meeting, or you may have. I'm thinking you may have missed me being very laudatory about your contribution to really coming up with the design that, as far as I'm concerned, really made it work. So thank you for doing that. Any just thoughts, comments, just general reaction to how do people feel about it's not like it's selling like hotcakes, but it's still, we've got them now posted around the town in several locations. So it's available there. There's a little bit more of a presence than there was over the past 7 years.
Yeah, it's good.
Any other comments?
I was actually curious, do we have a sense of how many got picked up at Brookline Day and in front of or at these locations where they are?
Okay, so I'm going to say first, no. Second, very few. Third, that's par for the course. Brookline Day for, a number of years, I've been I've taken a shift at the Brookline Community Aging Network table. We always have things to share, uh, newsletter copies, uh, informational booklets, other things like that. And when we're relying just on people sort of coming over and spotting them and picking them up, not a lot get passed. But when I actually go out and interact with a crowd that says, do you know about Brookline Ken? Do you know that this all volunteer organization that's advocating for their seniors aging in community? Would you like to learn more? Here's some information. When I go out and sort of actively peddle it, then I get more takers of the information. So I certainly wasn't doing that because, in fact, I was working my ship with Brookline Ken. And so the brochures were just sitting there on, they were on the Brookline Can table, but my responsibility at that table was to be pushing stuff about Brookline Can. So while I had the pedestrian advisory stuff there, and some people picked it up at that table, but I don't know how many picked up. I don't think many got picked up at the transportation, the DVW table, but a few. And as far as I'm concerned, it's every few matters. So, for example, when I left some at town hall, I think I originally left 10, and when I checked back a few days later, maybe there were 7 there, and so I put enough few there. So in other words, it's a little at a time, and personally, I think that's fine. In other words, having some presence where some people are picking up, that's people who didn't know about it before. And the nice thing is that now, in fact, I make a point. I can't say I've been very active with it, but I carry a few of these in my shoulder bag as I'm going out on errands. And once in a while, there's actually an opportunity for me to, chat with somebody and offer one. So, I mean, if anybody else wants to do that, I can certainly make some available. I mean, just so you know, I wound up, oh boy, now I'm blanking on what the total was that I printed. It was either 200 or 250. I can't remember which. It happened that the cost difference between printing 100 and printing double that number was not very big. So I just went ahead and printed more, figuring, these don't have a timestamp on them. There's no one expired by date on them. So they'll be good for a while. So, we certainly have another 100 or so sitting here for other events and other purposes. And my idea is to try to keep replenishing supplies at the places that I can reach, which are the Coolidge Corner Library, the main library, town hall, and the public safety building. Those are the places where I've left them, and the senior center. So those are the places where I've made sure there are copies. So if somebody else can try to have some in other places, I can be happy to drop some off so you can take somewhere else. Tommy.
Yeah, it might be worthwhile to try to intersect with the safe routes to school folks too, because I know I'm not doing it this year, but all the schools have safe routes to school representatives, and they have like the bike, walk, and roll to school days and a few other events throughout the year. We could get them some brochures to include in their little handouts because it's the rest of the stuff comes from the state itself. And so, be pretty easy. Be like, oh, hand out these ones too. So I could send an email to them if they'd see if they'd want some.
Why not? I mean, you have available a PDF of the brochure so you can show them what it looks like. And then if that winds up being something to be interested in, then happy to provide some. Yeah. that sounds fine. So one question I have is that, okay, we've had what I think of as an initial success. Do we want to build on that and do something else? This was, in the sense of basic information about the committee and about pedestrian matters. We could imagine doing something. I mean, one of the things that's been on my mind ever since the 2019 walk signal study has been this, because I found that people just don't understand walk signals. They understand the basics of walk signals, but most people, I mean, people do not know that walk signals in North and East of Brookline come on automatically. I mean, people are pressing the button all the time. They don't know that if they wait. And I watched somebody press the button of like 50 times in a row yesterday at Coolidge Corner, and I shouted across the street, "It's going to come on automatically." But they think that if they press a button and nothing happens, then something's wrong, and that's not the way it works. So that's been my own personal thing. But what would other people think of as something we might want to produce a separate brochure about? And I'm really thinking along educational lines. Marissa.
I feel like I say that. Hi, Victoria. Can you say hi? Victoria, hold on. Go find your library book. I feel like I say this every year, and every year I drop the ball because it's October 20th. We're changing the clocks in like 2 weeks, but every fall as it gets dark and people are out, especially around when we change the clocks, and now you're coming home from work and it's pitch black. It seems like there's a need for more education to remind drivers to be careful, to remind pedestrians to get some lights or reflectors or something for their bodies. And there's events like there's Harvest Fest that the recreation department's putting on this weekend. That would have been a perfect opportunity for us to have a table, and with whatever magic budget that we don't have, to buy a bunch of reflective stickers to for people to put on their backpacks and coats and things.
It seems to me that's something we could approach DPW with. I mean, the combination of DPW and the police department, maybe somehow we could come up with something, but exactly a campaign for distributing little lights that people, clip-on lights that people can wear, or arm reflector, reflector armbands, or even reflector vests, something like that. You could even imagine, you're right, we could piggyback with one of these other events that takes place. I think that's a great idea.
Put it in your calendar for next August for us to discuss at the committee.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry, it's dark now and it's going to be dark for the next 6 months. I mean, it's not an issue that's going to go away. It's true that, yeah.
But there's always that spike, especially the Monday after the clocks change. So.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, picking the timing would be good. But the point is, we can have the discussions and plan it and try to arrange. I mean, because somebody has to basically identify and set aside a little bit of budget to pay for some things. So yeah, that's good. Jesse.
I was just going to add that since being on school committee, I get to see every newsletter from every school every week. They're all having events for Halloween this weekend or very soon. And I think it would be easy for you to PDF the PTO from each of the schools that's available on the PSB website. If you need it, let me know. I can find them all for you and give them this as a PDF. Let them print it out and let them have it for a handout at the school Hallow Fests that they're having. Some are during the day, doesn't matter. Some are at evening for older kids. That's good. The one thing I would change about the design if we were going to do it is it's sort of when I held it in my hands when the paper when you sent came, it reads very strong on the front, Pedestrian Advisory Committee. For people, regular residents of the town, they don't really care like what it's called, what we do want to grab them with though is like being a safer walker. It has to teach them something right in the title. And then, in the lower section, we could say something about supported by or brought to you by the Pedestrian Advisory Committee of the Transportation Board. Those names of the committees, I don't think people really like, feel emotionally about, but something about be a safer walker brought to you by us, that could be very helpful. And so maybe we could quickly mock up a little different version, same content, but just maybe change the title around so that it just speaks to parents and older kids who would see it at one of these this weekend kind of thing, digitally get it to them and see if they can distribute it. Or send it to all the principals, actually. You could do it that way too. Send all the principals, the 8 principals of the elementary schools and to Anthony at the high school and let them cascade it down to their people. It's digital anyway, it won't cost you anything, just the time to mail it to them.
David,
Well,
our next Safe Routes to School meeting is next Tuesday morning. If you want to come, or and Jesse or anybody,
Yeah, sure.
like 8:10 in the morning, and that might be a good place to start by
Yeah.
asking about how to distribute things to the schools.
What time in the morning did you say?
8:10.
8 to 10 is what you're saying?
8
Oh,
eight-
10 minutes
10
after
minutes
8.
after 8 o'clock.
Okay,
ish.
sorry, I was just trying to be sure I was.
Because drop off
being-
is at 10 and drop off is at 8. And
Oh, I see.
so then you're usually
Now I
like on your way
understand.
home or home by like 8:15, 8:10 ish.
And that's an in-person kind of thing?
It's over Zoom. It's over Google Meet.
Yeah. Yeah, send us the link, Marissa, okay?
Yeah,
I don't normally
I'll
see
be
it.
honest, I this particular week coming up, I'm not gonna have time to revamp this.
I understand.
It's not gonna happen.
Right.
But I think that the ideas we talked about make a tremendous amount of sense, both in terms of, having a pitch out there that helps grab people's attention. And in a way, we have some of this on the back cover, the be safe, and we can actually do more along those lines. And I think I think we tried to be balanced because the major danger to pedestrians is driver carelessness, and we put that at the top. And then we also basically told pedestrians, yeah, you guys have a responsibility to be careful too.
Yeah.
And so we want all the above. Yeah, I think actually we may long-term want to have something that's just about the committee, but I agree. I think we want something that's more message oriented. Yeah, that's good. I don't have immediate new design in my mind. And I'm afraid that'll take a bit to come up with. I mean, I don't think, okay, tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think just changing the title page to say be a safe walker brought the, well, like what you were saying, Jesse, I'm
Yeah.
guessing that's not enough. Do you agree or not?
No, I think, well, lift it up again. I don't have mine like within, put yours on the camera again. Lift yours up. Yeah, I mean, I think, that's fine. I'm just saying is that, even above that where the roof is or something, this is sort of like getting to know a committee. But really what we want them to know is be safer walkers. Like we have the message, so.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking that oh, Marissa's safe walker. Yeah, so anyway, if
He's
there's
a
no,
bicyclist.
there you go. Nice. If we can't, if there's no timing now, we'll just catch it the next time around. That's fine.
Yeah, but I think I think the fact that we've been able to do something that we all like, and it
Yes.
was well received by people who did pick it up and did see it. And I've passed it on to a couple of people who thought, yeah, they were very positively impressed. So I'm think we shouldn't just let that success go by without following it up, is what I'm really saying. So let's keep this discussion alive, and I think we have some good ideas here.
Does
Okay.
does Aaron have a couple? Does Aaron have a couple copies for you?
No, that's a good point.
You should mail them to her or drop them off. She should definitely
Yep.
have them. 'Cause she's-
Well, if hopefully, oh, I keep forgetting. To the extent that people who work, even people who work at town hall, don't necessarily come in and out the front door.
That's
Because they
right.
park in the garage and they come up. And so that doesn't mean they will have walked past the stack that's sitting by the front entrance. It's funny.
Right.
And
The other thing is-
now Dan Murphy was also going to put some on the transportation desk. Marissa, that's exactly what Dan Murphy was going to do. So there should be some sitting on that transportation desk right now.
What about, have you already emailed the PDF to town meeting? Or have them printed out, which is more cost, and have them ready at the high school for next month? Let people take them from the table. When they pick up their laptop or something, or on the other table through the town clerk, just let it be on the corner to let interested people pick it up.
I don't recall that there's a table for general information dissemination.
There is on the first
Is-
floor where the stairs come up through the front doors. They've had the
Okay.
pool, they had the pool people there once, they've had other, if they're not having a Thanksgiving dinner, brought to you by the police helping the folks out, which is a beautiful thing. But even if we needed some of us who were, or not in town meeting, even there that night, holding some and handing them out, because everybody pretty much comes in one way
Yeah.
before 7 o'clock. So if they're 20 minutes early, you can hand out 100 with, you can get half a town meeting covered that way, and it's a good way of getting the word out.
Yeah, no, not
Just
a
an
bad
idea.
idea.
Just an
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. No, I think this is, this is really good.
Okay.
With the town meeting cookies, why not? Why not? All right, good ideas, people. Okay, a next item of business. Let's see if I can manage the next item of business.
The town
Yeah,
requirement, the compliance with the town requirements.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, but what I have to do is I hope that let me just see something here. Okay, this is the well, this is awkward because it's got one spreadsheet and behind another one. Let's see if I can make this a little neater there. Do people see the spreadsheet of member status or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I really haven't updated this recently. So does anybody have updates to this in terms of being sworn in for this committee, going through OML or COI training, or furnishing training certificates to the town clerk?
I wrote to Ben about me, and he said he can't do any swear-ins until closer to town meeting in general.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's very busy. So if I couldn't schedule it, so I was considering asking him if when they're signing in people for town meeting, if I can get signed in for this at the same time.
Oh, okay, good enough.
That'll be next.
And Janice, by the way, her term has actually expired, and we've arranged for her reappointment to come up to at the transportation board's next meeting. Janice, is that what you were going to talk about or something else?
Well, I wanted to get some clarification as well. So I did this training, as you can see, in 2022. But I re-signed up for training, assuming I had to take it again. And it's October 27th for um, uh, the conflict, no, the, yeah, OML training. And then the
Mhm.
COI training, I have downloaded that and it's in process.
Okay.
So I was just waiting for the reappointment for the swearing in, but assuming I'd have to take the training again. Does that make sense to you?
According to the town handbook, um, that there's this awkward thing about the town handbook is specifically for public bodies appointed by the select board, which we are not. But what the message from the town is that it's supposed to apply to all public bodies of the town. Okay, so I've been operating under the assumption that we are supposed to follow that handbook. And according to the handbook, when you are first appointed or reappointed, you need to go through the COI and OML training, even if you've already been through it before. And I think, to be perfectly honest, it doesn't matter if you would go through it right before being sworn in or whatever. The point is, it's
Right.
going through it again after being, when you're appointed or reappointed. So I think, if you get ahead of the game, that's not a problem. We'll
Okay.
consider that
Okay.
fine. So yeah, you go ahead
Yeah,
and do
so
that.
that's all set up and in process. And
Okay,
then I was just
great.
waiting for the reappointment to do the swearing in, but it sounds like there may be a backlog on that anyways.
Yeah, unfortunately, getting ready for town meeting is a busy time. Jonathan,
Yeah, I was sworn in. I've completed the OML training and I thought I completed the conflict of interest training. But apparently
Oh.
there's a second unit. There's one that's like an hour or an hour and a half long, and then there's a 10-minute unit, and I missed the 10-minute one, so I still have to do that.
So that's in progress.
Yep.
Oh, no, wait a minute. So, wait a minute, it's yes for OML
Yeah.
and,
And I also made the mistake of getting sworn in before I had realized I wasn't done with the COI, so I don't think the town has my certification, but I was
wait,
able to sworn in
no, I
anyway.
don't think it matters. In other
Okay.
words, if you got sworn in for this committee, then you got sworn in for this committee.
Okay.
And you're saying you did.
I did. Yeah.
Okay, so that is a yes. And obviously you can't finish the certificates
Yep.
until you've you finish the training, but that sounds good. Okay, Jesse?
Just a comment that there's like 20 of us on the Expenditure and Revenue Study Committee appointed by the Select Board. And
Yeah.
nobody, and it's chaired by Bernard Green, who's the chair of the Select Board, and co-chaired by Chaz Carey, the town administrator. And not one comment has been made. We've been working as a team since last June, and not a single comment's been made by Bernard or Chaz. And there are those of us that are elected officials on there, as well as town staff, as well as citizens. No one's mentioned anything about residents. I mean, no one's mentioned anything about having to do this as basically a subcommittee of the town. So when you say that pedestrian advisory is a subcommittee of the transportation board, which is then a subcommittee really of the select board, and that every committee, as you go down the waterfall, has to go through this, it hasn't come up in expenditures and revenues. So I'm a little curious as to why not. It may be your interpretation. I don't know. So I'm just saying that I'll ask. I can ask Chaz later this week, but it just seems to me like there's maybe some differing interpretations of who has to do this.
So first of
I'll
all,
look
this
into
is
it.
this is something that bugs me
Yeah,
about, there are rules that get passed and nobody watches to see if anybody's following the rules. And
right.
then my only feeling is, why the heck having the rules if you don't care about whether they're followed or not?
Agreed.
And you get somebody like me who comes along and wants to follow the rules,
Right.
and then to learn that other people aren't. I mean, believe me, there are other there are other aspects of town rules and town bylaws in which I feel, nobody cares.
Yeah.
So to me, I would love it if you would ask Chaz,
I'm writing to him now.
do you stand behind the town handbook's requirement that when you're appointed, you do this, this, and this?
Yeah, I'm writing to him right now, so just let's continue.
That's great. I would love to hear his answer.
Okay.
Yeah, because if we don't have, I mean, strictly speaking, according to the handbook, any vote that gets taken by members who have not been sworn in is invalid. It says you cannot vote until you've been sworn in. Well, obviously, we've been voting and we've had a number of members not sworn in yet. So all I can say is we consider it a high priority to function as a committee and to live up to our mission and try to discharge that mission as best we can. And we'll do our best for these other aspects of it as well. So, okay. Who's talking? I can't tell. Oh, Anita. So I can stop sharing if there are no other. Anita, are there any updates you have? Did we lose your? Looks like maybe we lost your audio or video. Well, if you get recovered, you raise your hand or something. Okay, I will stop sharing unless someone else has an update to put on this. And I will keep doing it. I'm trying to keep us reminded about this, just frankly, so I don't have to worry about it. About us, not being in compliance with what the town says we should do. And then frankly, if we hear back, well, it doesn't really matter, that I'm going to suggest get rid of that part of the handbook. Don't adopt something that you don't care about. We do that. We have aspirational bylaws and rules that say, in effect, this is how we would really like people to behave, but if they don't, we're not going to do anything. I find that annoying. So anyway, enough of that. Let us turn to our crosswalk item, which is identifying intersections which had curb ramps but don't have crosswalks. And this I want to just throw open. Let me just let me do another share. My problem is I have too darn many tabs. So here's the, I hope everybody can see this. We actually came up with about 35 different intersections. And so to me, and some are well commented and some, even ones I put in, are not. And so, first of all, thank you to everybody who identified things and submitted them. So a reminder, at least my impression of why we were doing this is A, we think the town needs more crosswalks because that helps pedestrian safety. B, we wanted to provide at least a sample list showing, yeah, look, here's a number of specific examples where there in fact are curb ramps already, so you don't have to do reconstruction to put those in, but you need to paint crosswalks. And then, so these are the samples that go behind a potential request for additional crosswalks. But then the question is how to use this specific list other than as a general set of examples. And as I said, some of these are well commented, and have been pointed out as, boy, a crosswalk could really help with this particular intersection. And so I guess the question I'm throwing out to this committee is, should we make specific requests for specific intersections? Or just say, you know, we're happy for you to use your own judgment. What we do want more crosswalks. And for example, here are a few where we think it would really be helpful. What do people think we should do with this now that we've gotten this starting list?
Yeah, so David, my suggestion is that we provide it to Dan Murphy perhaps, and then ask him within a certain period of time to get back to us with his dated priority list of when this will get done. Because I don't think there's any serious debate there's going to be between the traffic engineering and pedestrian advisory to say, when you have like that great one that Jonathan found on Road 22 at Tappan and Gardner, I forgot about that. That's a great catch. And you have the curb ramp. There's no crosswalk, and people are walking back and forth to school. So it's just ridiculous that they've left them go. And what we really want is this schedule for when these will get done, because these are all, we've done the work. It's like what Lynn's doing for the disabled parking, handicap parking. We've already done the work for them, right? We collected the data and we told them, here are the areas where you're missing crosswalks. They should just say, thank you. We'll take care of it. We can't believe, thanks for doing this work. What a great committee. That's what they should be doing. So I would just basically have a conversation with him, explain what we did, why we did it, and that we're hoping that the results will be they'll get their striping people out, and one by one, check off this list. It's a safety.
Okay, Tommy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Jesse just said. I also think, we should make sure to add and highlight that this isn't just like pedestrian safety issues, like that there's no crosswalk, but well, I guess this is part of pedestrian safety, is that crosswalks are also traffic control devices because drivers see them. When
Yes.
you have painted lines in a road, drivers see them. And I know in my neighborhood, like we get past through traffic and people smoke some of these stop signs, and I don't think they even see them. But as soon as we even got a crosswalk across Dean Road right down the street from us, cars slow down there because they go, oh, there's a crosswalk here. And you can tell people are paying attention right away. I've actually been very pleasantly surprised by what a positive impact it's had on slowing people down at the, Dean Road, Chestnut Hill area over here. And, it increases traffic compliance. And so I know people complain about pass-through traffic in our town, and it's a major traffic control issue as well. And I think you could quiet some squeaky wheels if you were having these crosswalks also slow people down in various neighborhoods.
Okay. Anyone else want to chime in here?
Just one other thing, David. At the top, along Winchester Street at Thorndike, Coolidge, and Fuller, somebody at some point had some idea, oh, we'll red brick it, and that'll make it like nice. The problem is it's dark brick, there's no lines painted, and it's terrible. When you come up, you can't see anybody. You don't know there's a crosswalk there, especially at night. And even during the day, it's almost as dark as the asphalt. And it's dark red painted along the sides of the lane that the pedestrians walk in. And that's a heavily walked street, Winchester. So again, whoever paid the money to brick lay a crosswalk, right? That's us. We paid the money, we paid the town to pay the money to have red brick, dark red brick, inlaid crosswalks put into 3 streets there, and no painting. And it's dark and it's really useless. So it'd be a lot safer for what Tommy says also, because cars coming up the hill to get to Winchester blow up into the into Winchester Street to see because of parked cars, and they go right through the crosswalk. Every car goes right through that painted the brick crosswalk. So that's sort of, to me, like when I saw it, And, you know, once we started talking about the spreadsheet, I said, whoa, that really needs to be, painted. It's not, and I know someone who got hit on a bike at that intersection. Because they were biking along the cars on Winchester Street, which was fine along the parked cars, and a car came up to make a left turn onto Winchester from Thorndike and promptly hit the biker. So it's because they, as Tommy says, you don't realize you're getting close to the edge, the end of a block when the corner shows up, but it's all dark. So putting painted white lines there for a real crosswalk could really make it much safer.
That's a good point. Lynn, put your hand up.
Jesse, thanks for noticing that, because bricks and wheelchairs do not go
Yep.
together.
Yeah.
Because bricks, they don't stay flat forever. They start to erase and they're horrible. So it's really, for anyone in the disabled community, it's a horrible choice for a crosswalk. So thank you.
Now,
It's weird that it even
I-
got put in, so.
I just have to ask a quick question. So most of these are simulated bricks, they're actual bricks. It's it's a brick like, it's made to look like brick, but it's not brick. But I'm assuming that even that simulated brick is what you're talking about, Lynn, correct?
I don't know. I know like brick sidewalks, especially like downtown Charles Street. Jim could never walk on
No,
those.
I understand there are many brick sidewalks. I've noticed many in Cambridge, in the Boston area, but here we're talking about crosswalks that are made of, which I think of as, I think it's a simulated brick. It's a brick-like construction and finish, but they're not actually individual bricks, I don't think.
Oh, so they don't have that, uneven surface.
Well,
then.
they are, it has a slightly
No,
uneven surface.
They're
and that's
bumpy,
what I'm
they're bumpy, right?
Yeah, I mean, it does have a slightly grooved a texture across, but it's not individual bricks. So I don't know if the grooves are as
Right.
deep and as much of a problem for wheelchairs as the brick sidewalks would be. I agree with you on the brick sidewalks. That's a problem.
I don't know about.
Yeah, so I'm going to now, of course, disagree in part with what's been said, and I'll explain why, and then we can continue the discussion. My bet is that of all the intersections, of all the roads in Brookline that have curb ramps, I think at some point after the passing of ADA, the town went out and tried to put in curb ramps on just about every corner in Brookline of some form or another. Some are very rudimentary, they're makeshift, they're not very good, but there's some form of curb ramp on almost every corner in Brookline. I think it's well above 90%. But the number of those intersections that have crosswalks may be more like 10%. So if we're saying just by walking around our neighborhoods, we have found these streets lacking, these intersections lacking crosswalks, and we want the town to put in crosswalks to these 35 intersections. What about the other 50, 70, 100, however many it is? My feeling, and again, feel free to disagree with me, is that rather than put in a blanket list, we should try some prioritization. We already have identified in the comments some of these where we say one or the other of us says it would really help in this location. And to me, putting in a few that are specific requests and then ask about, in a sense, the program, because we have to remember there are budget implications. I mean, we went through, I don't know how many people here were involved some years ago. This was back in Todd Corain days, where there was an attempt to get a budget increment. And for a couple of times, there was a budget addition funded out of the TNC funding. That's a transportation network company funds that the town gets from Uber and Lyft for pavement markings. And there's some of that, I think some of it's going to that this year. But we were talking about a need for another $100,000 in the budget just to replenish the existing pedestrian crosswalk and bike signal and bike markings on the pavements. Not necessarily putting in new ones, but basically keep them refreshed throughout the year to increase the number of times per year that they get repainted so that they would stay bright and visible and therefore making things safe. And that was a big chunk of the budget. So you talk about, it's not just the cost to put them down, it's the cost to keep them repainted. And we may be looking at another $100,000 a year or something like that in the budget. So I think they probably, it's something between 50 and 100,000, I think, currently that they spend on repainting, but that's not enough to repaint everything as often as we would like them to be repainted. So my concern is I want any request we make to be, it's fine if we push the boundary, but I don't want it to seem so overwhelming that they then don't do anything. So what do other people think? Am I thinking about this wrong?
First of all, it takes some time for the paint to wear out. So if there are ones where there are safety risks, especially along safe routes to school, it would behoove the town to do the painting now, assuming a 8 to 10 year lifespan, say, before it starts to wear out. That you get the safety benefit now. So if they have the curb ramp, which is basically inviting the pedestrian, especially somebody maybe on a wheelchair as well, to be able to get into the crosswalk, seems to make sense that they should be painting a crosswalk there. And if it's in an area of town which is not really safe routes to school oriented, that could be one lever that we use to divide these between those which are school oriented, where it's a kids' safety of our kids, like where Tommy's mentioning in the, for Hayes School, kids commuting back and forth or kids crossing over into Runkle. And if it's somewhere along a street, which is be a nice to have, but it's not school related. That's one way we could divide the list down. And I think we get some.
I mean, there's some that I put in that, I mean, they are intersections which have curb ramps and do not have crosswalks, where my own personal feeling is that they're low priority compared to other things. There's some places where they're high priority. And
that's what I'm saying. So make the list. We could give them the list, prioritize already, and see what Dan and his team think about it.
So how would we get the safe routes to school prioritization?
Probably look a lot. Well, first of all, let's identify which one of them have anything to do with being really close to schools. If it's a mile away from a school or 3/4 of a mile away, like where Tommy's neighborhood is, they're a 1/4 mile from the school or less, 1/8 of a mile from the school. So those might be pretty important. But if you're 3/4 of a mile away and you could be like the one kid, I mean, I'm not saying it's great, but if it's the one kid walking from some 3/4 of a mile away or something, that might have a lower priority, not the kid's life, of course. I'm just saying in terms of the demographic where kids are walking from, we should be able to circle out from, or bullseye out from the school area and see which one of the 34 or so have the best chance of intersecting with a lot more pedestrian kid traffic.
Yeah, I would think the town should have, if they don't, should have like walk sheds for all the schools, and they might have walk sheds for the parks, and anything that falls within those kinds of walk sheds would be, I would think, where we'd want to prioritize it, right? So things that effectively are, like an attractive nuisance for a pedestrian, anything that's going to attract a pedestrian, a school, park, stuff like that, anything within, an X minute walk of one of those things might be how to prioritize it. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I agree it's a good idea. Is somebody willing to take that on?
I still have an ArcGIS license. I could see if I couldn't slap something together. It's been a minute since I've used it, but I could try.
Well, that would be great. I mean, something like that would be very, very useful. And I mean, I think the notion, Jesse's idea and what you're saying was of trying to not just dump a bunch on the town, but to say, here's some things that would help you prioritize and figure out which things to do. And in some cases, I mean, like one I noted, there's a particularly large intersection. When you got a large intersection with a wide crossing, I consider that the pedestrian is spending more time being vulnerable to traffic. And so
Yep.
I think that's more important than a very narrow street that's in a quiet residential area. Marissa,
Doesn't the town already have a policy for prioritizing something? I guess it's for prioritizing, was it sidewalk repair or something? But like, I mean, shouldn't we be able to just give them a list of addresses and they know which ones, or they have a way of figuring out which ones fit in their priority of, like, it wasn't just schools, it was like proximity to the senior center, to houses of worship, to commercial areas.
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest, I don't think we got really good answers from DPW to our questions about how they prioritize. Okay, we tried several times over several meetings. And we got some piecemeal information, but I don't think we got enough insight into the way they really think about it. And remember, one of the things we were told is that, the review they had, I mean, that was with regard to sidewalk repair. The review they had done by the consulting, somehow the data was not as useful as they thought, and so they were having to redo it. So there were problems with the information they had for constructing priorities, but certainly at a high level, yes. But none of that was about adding crosswalks where no crosswalks exist. So we haven't had that discussion with DPW. And maybe the right thing to do is to arrange DPW to come to one of our meetings rather than just shipping something over. Ask and this is sort of between, with Amy having gone now, she would probably have been the logical place, but we probably could get Dan Murphy here and have a conversation with him about that, and hopefully more productive than what we had before on the sidewalk repair prioritization. Does that make sense? Anybody have other ideas? Again, what I don't want to do is deliver something where they say, oh my gosh, that's so far beyond the pale, we just can't do anything with it. I want to give them within that request, a small number of very actionable items that says, okay, we can do 1, 2, and 3. I would like to do something that actually results in action. Jesse?
So I guess another way of turning it around so that they own it would be to maybe get to Dan and just ask him the simpler question is, what's the policy on linking existing curb ramps with crosswalks? And in cases where the crosswalks aren't there, what's the transportation engineering division's strategy? And then once he tells us what it is, we can share with him that as part of our pedestrian advisory activities, we fanned out across a lot of areas of the Brookline, cataloging areas that are potential concern that we'd like to review with him, and then from that, merge it with their strategy for how they want to do it. It's in there, I'm sure it's in their goals already, to make things safer and to maintain what they have. And in areas where they didn't get to it, we're helping them. So let it be a win for him. And, it's done through us.
So what's of the 9 schools in Brookline, my bet is that we've identified intersections near what, 3 or 4 of them?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
But so I would ask everybody
we'd
to
have to identify.
take a look at this and
I'll
see
go
what
back
we've
down
done.
through. I'll go back down through the list. It's in a Google sheet. I'll just put another column in and sort of swag down what the closest school is or something like that, so we can get a sense. I know the Buckminster Cotswold, which is the one I put in after I created the sheet, is in it says the sign on the street at the corner says school zone, speed limit 15 miles per hour. So we know that's
a pretty good clue. I mean,
Yeah.
most of the ones I put in,
a block from Runkle.
not all of them, most of mine are in the area general I lived in, and the nearest school is the Florida Rough and Ridley School.
Correct.
So that would be the school for most of the ones that I put in. But some of those are on side streets that get very little traffic and are not really on somebody's route to the school, so I don't think they would really count.
Yeah, let me put in a column and I'll take a whack at it, okay? And then the same thing, I
Okay.
mean, if Tommy's gonna do something, he can add a column and
Yeah.
add.
I think that would be great. Yeah, let's see if we can turn this into something.
Thanks.
This is good. It's we've had good discussions tonight. This is good stuff. So we'll come back to this at the next meeting and see if we can think about, and I will actually communicate with Dan Murphy and see, what we can do, both in terms of getting a statement, and in terms of having him come, because he may find it's better to just come to the meeting and talk to us about their policy and their approach than sending something in writing. I want to jump to the item number 5 on the agenda. We can come back. We've got some stuff that we're in the middle of doing, so that sort of takes care of next issues for us to focus on for a little bit. But I had what I call brief mentions, and the idea here is just to bring everybody up to date on stuff that's going on. So the first thing has to do with warrant article 8 for this town meeting, and that has to do with lighting. And the attempts to create bylaws that govern lighting have been in the works for over a year. There was a warrant article at last fall's town meeting, which I spoke against multiple times. And unfortunately, that same thing is being resuscitated by staff. But the actual warrant article is a very simple one. It's let's prohibit nuisance lighting, and have it be complaint driven, and let the building commissioner decide what's a nuisance and what's not. And just what we're talking about is really extremely excessive lighting, that spills way too much over into other properties and causes discomfort or safety problems. But at the planning board meeting last week, staff came back with basically resuscitating, as far as I'm concerned, the warrant article from last year, which I also speak against if it came back, because as far as I'm concerned, it overregulates an attempt to put in dark sky, but to me, it ignores some, for example, it seems to ignore, to me, the fact that all you got to do is change a light bulb to a lower level of illumination and you've taken care of a good chunk of the dark sky problem. There's still a lot left to do, but let's look for the low-hanging fruit and focus on something like that. So anyway, I just wanted to know, I have submitted, I've spoken at the AC Land Use Subcommittee with regard to this. I spoke at the planning board meeting. I may be speaking tomorrow night at the select board meeting, because hearing on that warrant article is on the agenda. The planning board is coming back to it later this week. I don't think that's a hearing, so I probably wouldn't be speaking. That's a board discussion. So we'll see where that goes. And we'll see so I don't know where this is going to land, but the point I've tried to make is that we submitted the select board's pedestrian friendly lighting report back in 2021. In 2022, I got the select board to vote in favor of a long-term goal of better pedestrian lighting in town. And the fact is that no funding has been identified or set aside for improving pedestrian lighting. And so if it's not going to happen by the town spending money on it, then we have to go with what we have. And what we have is that often the case of the outdoor lighting on residences and commercial enterprises helps illuminate sidewalks and make them safer to walk on. And so to me, we want that. We don't want excessive lighting, but where the lighting actually helps, we want that. And so some of these dark sky proposals totally ignore the fact that there's a public safety benefit from outdoor lighting. And so what my main point that I try to make in these various hearings and meetings is that we want reasonable procedures, reasonable bylaw, and where lighting can help, we don't want to get rid of it. Let's see, in fact, have more of it. Okay, that's enough of that. Another thing is just an update. For those of you who attended the September 10th session, it was connected with the Coolidge Corner parking lot study, and it was a talk by the Jeff Speck, Chris Dempsey folks on towards a more walkable Brookline. And during that, Jeff Speck made the comment. He reiterated a point he's made before. It's in his books about replacing traffic signals with always stops, and that he considers that to be a safety benefit. Well, he both said that and called out Dan Murphy. Says Dan Murphy has been putting out things on social media in favor of this. And so I thought, well, triggered by that, I said, well, I should see what some blind people think. So I got in touch with some blind people in town, and lo and behold, I stirred up more concern than I intended to. And so that has resulted in a lot of conversation back and forth. And I had to talk to multiple people and including Dan Murphy, who's assured me nobody is planning anything right now. There was this concern that if somebody is talking about changing an existing traffic signal to an always stop, that means taking away the accessible pedestrian signals that blind people depend on. And the point is to reassure people that nobody's proposing that. Nobody is saying that. It's just, here's a thought that has been mentioned, and we want to keep in mind and have conversations about what does make our intersections safer for all. And so it's something we will always be willing to consider. There are no specific proposals in place right now. And I just wanted people to know that these conversations had happened. I already mentioned the fact that Janice's term had run out, and so she's up for reappointment by the Transportation Board. And I should mention that Dylan Pullman Blom got in touch with me. He said he is a new transportation engineer with the town, and he will be the conduit between the town, i.e. DPW, and our committee. So we have a new person, Dylan, to talk with and get information with. So I'll probably include him on anything I send to Dan Murphy, so that he's aware of the kinds of things that we're asking for. So I just wanted to bring everybody up to date on those things. As has already been mentioned, our next meeting is Monday, November 10th. And that again will be Zoom. At some point, we want to talk about maybe doing another an in-person meeting, because that was nice the last time we had those. Any questions or comments about any of those things that I ran through really quickly? Any thoughts about new business, other things that I should think of putting on the November agenda, apart from what we've already talked about having on it? I've had I continue to get from time to time emails, conversations with residents who bring things to their attention. Most recently, someone who lives in a member of the senior community who lives in center communities there on Center Street, but still actively walks and complains vociferously about or sent me a strong complaint about the condition of the sidewalks along Center Street, and even had Dan Murphy go out and sort of walk up and down the street with her in an attempt to try to get DPW to do something about the sidewalk conditions there. I think all of us should try to be aware of places where conditions are poor and make sure we report those in Brook Online. The more reports they get, the better it builds our case for saying something really needs to be done here.
David, on that topic, I'll
Yeah.
just let you know. I mean, I remember that Marissa had brought up the issue of the tree heaving on Center Street, just next to Carrie Goldberg's house at the corner of Williams. The worst part of the case in there is that when my parents were alive and I had them living at 40 Williams, I put in 15 or 20 Brook on lines because of sidewalk issues. What the town did in all the cases, because I went over and over and over for about a year with them on this, is they did dutifully go out and do the asphalt patching to make it a little smoother. But as Lynn will recognize immediately, they did nothing about flattening the sidewalk. What they ended up making was little mountains, like little hill things. Because when the one sidewalk went up an inch or two, they just put a triangle of asphalt to make it so it wouldn't be a bump. It just became a little hill. So they never came back and opened and did any serious sidewalk repair or replacement, I should say, or renovation. They simply did patching. And in the areas where the trees lifted, they didn't do anything. In fact, there's one now on Winchester near Coolidge, which is about 2 feet higher than the sidewalk, the hill, with the roots coming through up and coming through there to make it throw up too if you bike over it. But anyway, so that's a really bad one. But that area of Center and Williams has a tremendous amount of senior citizens walking around on walkers and being pushed on wheelchairs, as my parents were, and it has not been adequately handled.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, so
And I'll be honest, first of all, we have to keep pushing. I don't know we're ever going to solve the tree root problem completely. What I have seen in some areas in Cambridge, though admittedly what I'm talking about is actually with younger trees with roots that aren't quite as bad, is they basically start further away from the roots and build a more gentle ramp up and then a more gentle ramp down on the other side. And so by taking a stretch that's maybe about 20 feet long, not just the sort of 4 to 6 feet over the roots themselves, but spreading it out on either side, it makes it a more passable route. I've in the past, there have been several times when I've talked to Brookline people in DPW about doing something like that. But I haven't seen anything like that happen. Maybe that's something we need to come back to again.
The other alternative, by the way, is that there is a technology where they use a large blade to cut the root parallel to the edge of the sidewalk, and then they insert a plate straight down along the side of the sidewalk between there and the tree so that the tree root cannot grow in that direction. That's a little more expensive, certainly a very mechanical way to do it, and it does work. But the town hasn't.
Are you talking about severing the root?
Yeah, where it goes under the sidewalk, not where it goes to the other directions. And that there is a technology for that specifically for these cases.
Okay. That is actually worth a session, an agenda item on its own right. I think it would be good to find the right people at DPW. I mean, I can recall, from a few years back, conversations with Erin Shute about this, and she's totally aware of the fact that where they need to plant new trees, they want to plant trees that don't have those roots that buckle the sidewalks. And so she's very much aware of the problem. But what to do with the existing tree roots, I haven't seen good solutions. There was one place where I complained about for many years, and it finally sort of, elevated it to Kevin Johnson when he was at one of our meetings a few years ago, and it did get taken care of. But now that asphalt is already buckling again. The point is, the asphalt is not a permanent repair. It's not permanently smooth, even where it's temporarily smooth. Anything else? Okay, we've got a couple of good topics, issues to come back to. So this has been a very good discussion. I really appreciate everybody. So thank you all. If there's nothing else, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I'm now, just starts that. I will therefore declare by acclamation that this meeting of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee is adjourned. Thank you very much. Bye all.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy Halloween.